Yeah, it's brand new.
Okay. We are now live. The mute was on, so I'm not sure if you want to start over.
Oh, okay, sure. I want to call to order the Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission meeting for April 8th, 2024. And we'll start with a roll call. And why don't we just do it left to right on the dais?
Lansing Duncan, 3rd District.
Rob Knight, 4th District.
Richard Saloga, 6th Saloga, new member, 2nd District.
Keith Kaufman Gray, Chair, 1st District.
Ronald Nye at large.
Sheila Snow, 1st District. Randy Malcolm, 5th District.
Okay, and before we get moving, as you can see, we have a new commissioner and want to welcome Richard Saloga, okay, to the commission. And you want to say a few brief words about yourself, members?
Okay. My peer was an architect. Started out very interested in land. The mic.
You're on.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I retired about 2009, moved down to Goleta in 2014, and have been serving on the board and mostly as president of the homeowners. Wife persuaded me not to do that anymore. Grateful.
Okay, well, thank you and welcome. Okay, let's move on to the minutes. The minutes we have today are from March 11th, 2024. And before we get started, again, I want to thank Commissioner Duncan. He did an amazing job of doing edits on the first draft minutes. And so what you're seeing are with the minutes, the edits that Commissioner Duncan had done in advance. And so we can go over, but you want to talk with Commissioner Duncan first, since you did so much work on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank Jonathan too. He did an excellent first draft. And what was more challenging this time were the variety of sources, because apart from our regular tape, we also had the memo, of course, that had been sent to MBAR and a transcript of the meeting. So I attempted to look at all three of those things in putting this together. I can still see a few minor edits that I would suggest. Let's see, on page 2 in district reports, member Ron Nye says something. We don't need the quote marks at the end anymore. Okay. And then on page 3, there's a rather long quote from myself right in the middle. It says, I thought HLAC was getting, let's make that read, he thought HLAC was getting. Okay. And then, Commissioner Witosh is not here. I just wanted to make sure that the quote marks I put around his descriptive terms that he uses in the middle of that statement, country cottage and chic contemporary farm home, matched his descriptions. Putting quotes around it was an attempt to obviously point out that these are descriptive terms. And I'm pretty sure this is the right chic, not chic of Arabi, as it read in the first draft. Then on the very last page, page 4, under 9, HLAC discussion of incentives, there's an action that should read Duncan moved. Those were the things I saw, Mr. Chair, that still needed a little adjustment.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Duncan. Okay, we have Commissioner Malcolm.
Okay, regarding my comments, I know I said the Montecito Board of Architects. I'm not whatever the appropriate. 'Cause I know, I think for reference.
We could change that.
Katie, the planner,
We misspoke.
Katie, the planner, she just verified that it's both MPC and MBAR.
Okay, yep, that's what I meant. Any other comments on the minute?
Well, I can't let this go by. Under, on page 3, on the same, Commissioner Witosh comments, the, fourth line from the bottom, the quotation mark should be outside the period. Since we're going so deep into this, I contribute.
Yeah, I was waiting for something real dramatic here. Okay. Okay. Any more comments on the minute?
If not, Mr. Chair, I would move that we adopt the minutes of March 11th, 2024 as amended.
Okay, we have a move to accept the minutes.
I will second.
Second, all in favor to accept the minutes, say aye. And we have one abstention. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to a staff update. This is the time the Planning and Development HLAC staff will provide a brief oral announcement or report of items general interest to the commission, members of the public, such as ordinance amendments to process recently approved or they may be impact agenda items, updates on procedures, and the status of appeal hearings of projects that the commission has reviewed or designated. And I believe today we have planner Katie Nall that is here to give us an update on the Skybird project that we heard last month.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Katie Nall. I wasn't present at the meeting last month, but I was listening in. So the Skybird exterior alterations was presented to your board. I believe it was March 11th, 2024. You provided some comments, and then we presented those comments and the project description to the Montecito Planning Commission on March 20th, 2024. The project was ultimately approved by the commission with a couple minor alterations, including the roof material was changed to shingles, and colors were specified, as well as the window paint and exterior paint of the residence and the carports. But overall, the architectural plans that you guys reviewed on that March 11th date were approved. And since that approval, the project has been appealed again by the same appellants. So we'll be taking that to the Board of Supervisors in June.
Question I have, will our memorandum and maybe the minutes of our meeting will be also included in the packet to the Board of Supervisors?
Yes. And I'm happy to see how detailed they are, and we will put that in the Board of Supervisor package.
Great. Thank you very much. This is not agendized item, so we can't really talk about it, but thank you for coming and give us an update on this. Thank you. Any other staff updates?
No other staff updates.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on. Let's move on to item number 5, project discussion. The County Landmarks Advisory Commission will discuss funding potential historic projects, supplemental letters, information received, and other subcommittees that have been formed. This is a time I always put a little chair updates in here. We probably should always change that to be chair/project update. I don't have a whole lot, but I do have something. Back in February, all of us received an email from Planning Development Joe Dargell, and it was concerning a new online folder for historic reports that was set up by Planning Development, and we all received that. And if you remember, if you tried to go in there, it was empty. There wasn't anything in it. And I kept going in to see if they added a new report, and it's still empty. So I ended up emailing him on April 2nd, and I just inquired that I keep checking and do not see any new reports, asked if I was doing something wrong. And I got an email back on Friday, and he said that there hasn't been many recent projects that we have been informed about. He is meeting with the planners. So basically, there's been no reports added to that box. So we're not doing anything wrong. There's just been no reports. But he's meeting with planners shortly. He didn't say exactly when, but shortly. And to remind them to upload projects when they affect something historic. He mentioned that he knows about one or two that should be uploaded. So there is a couple of projects that we would be interested in to look at. But the nice thing is he's going to let us know whenever planners have uploaded a project. So basically he's having a meeting with all the planners, informing them to remind them that if it's something that's triggering a historic report, it should be uploaded. And then he will let us know that it's been uploaded. So, and then if we have a problem, then maybe the idea I was thinking, maybe he could come and give us a little tutorial how to do it. But first we'll do this, see if we can get in on our own, and then we'll go from there. So that's that. So I was kind of wondering what's going on with that. And so again, I hope
to-
everyone has been able to do that.
May I chime in?
Go right ahead.
Well, you've opened up a huge Pandora's box here. Number one, Mr. Dargill has yet to explain to us what we're supposed to do with these supposed history reports that he's supposedly putting into our space. So there's that. We'd like Joe to explain that to us. Secondly, we have to register or come up with a password. We have to do a bunch of stuff to even get in, which I tried to do this morning to even look at our own box. And I wasn't doing something right. So we may need Jonathan to walk us through getting into the box. I've gotten in before somehow.
Normally Jonathan will send the link with.
Yeah, the link, you click on the link and then it asks for register and so on and so forth.
No, usually the link just,
I always have to,
okay, I think if you go to the very bottom, it's the county thing to get in, and that's where Jonathan will usually, right after his little talk about there'll be a link right under that. But I've noticed there's always a link further down, which is like the county link. And that's probably what you're opening up, is the county link.
I thought that's where everything had to be accessed. That this was a new, yeah, I thought it was a new
I know it's
policy.
confusing. I mean,
So thirdly, the third issue that revolves around this is that Joe did put a report in there because I was able to access it, of all people. It was the 2929 East Valley Road project that came before us some time ago.
yeah, he mentioned.
You were never able to find it. I did. So there you
That's
have
why
it.
I'm thinking.
Those are three issues that need clearing up, and it's
Let's wait, let him know. I have a feeling it will be shortly. He's going to let us know that there is something loaded. If we can't do it, then we need to either, what I was thinking is we could either have a special Zoom meeting, just because this is only private. This access is only for HLAC members. It's nobody else. So if we did something publicly like now, it might be a problem. But again, I was thinking, how do you do a Zoom meeting when you're also looking at stuff on a computer when you're talking? So anyway, we'll try to work this out, but I just wanted to let everyone know that he will be letting us know when something is uploaded. Then we'll go from there. Okay. Thank you for your comments. Okay, that's all I had under project discussion. So let's move on to the budget. And everyone had their budget was put on your sheet this morning. For the new member, what we do is every month we just get a monthly update on the budget. The budget goes through the fiscal year, which is the end of June. So we're getting towards the end of the fiscal year. There's only a couple months left. Unfortunately, we never have money left over. Planning and development support staff seems to eat up a lot of it. Any questions on the budget? I, at this time, thought I'd bring up something. We do have a subcommittee on plaques that was formed quite a while ago. And if you look at our budget, we are still under. And I hate to see some money go away by the end of June. If we, we've learned that if we spend it early, we can spend it. If we wait till the end and the budget's over, we can't spend that, what's shown there. I was thinking that maybe the subcommittee should meet and come back next month with a potential couple of properties that we think would be open to wanting a plaque. And then come back, just to give you an idea of, I was looking at cost in April 2023 it's been a year now since I went down to the place that makes the plaques. And the quote was around $450 plus tax for the plaque. So that gives you an idea. Of course, it's gone up, I'm sure, since then. But they have a file for us on there for everything. So, I mean, anyway, that was my proposal. I just opened this up for discussion. Yes.
At the, some of the.
Yes. We learned this last year or the year before, that we used to always be able to use our professional services line item, even if it was overall with planning and staff support. But now they've cracked down that we have to. So the idea is let's spend it now before it gets used up by something else. Yes.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, when we looked at this before, one thing we noted is that P&D staff support has not changed in, did we say 10 years? It was longer than that. And so I think we put in a request that when we're budgeted for this next time, that figure be increased to be something logical and reasonable, considering that we're always overextending that. So that's what I would suggest, that we have that budget request going forward.
I have to admit, David let me know end of last year to, when the time is, and now it's almost too late now, I think, but because they're going to hearings now, and it's like way down at the beginning level is when you can start going to the different departments. So I'll talk to David and see if there's any way to get in that conversation. Because what happens, I think, is they have a bulk amount of money, they divide it up, and they just will go by commission. This is what it was last year. You don't have an increase, so they just kind of, put everything in the same in the little pot. And unfortunately, we all know that it was 2012, I believe, that we saw we looked at our budget from 2012, and it was the same amount. Well, salaries have gone up since 2012. So we know that, proportionally, it's not the fault of planning and staff that they're way above. It's just that's the cost of salaries now. So anyway, I'll talk to David about that and see if we can get in the talks if it's not too late. So is there any agreement and consensus to have the subcommittee? I know there are some other things that need to be done, like on the website, and we wanted to do that. Commissioner and I know you were kind of looking at that.
Yes. I think, in my opinion, the website upgrade is more important than, or there's more pressing need than doing plaques. However, it's a problematic project, and I had a long talk with David Villalobos about this, and he was fairly discouraging as far as working with the IT component of the website. They kind of like to run it their own way, and they have an idea and then they want to keep it. So that's fine. But what we really need to do, aside from design, is improve our opening screen for each landmarked property. I think our end of it needs to come up with a better opening screen, which has the property description, all the little elements, date of construction, all that. And if we devised that kind of like what we had a committee that revisited the applications for nominations. We need to do another effort like that to get some presentable form into the website. When you click on Main Bag House or whatever, it comes up. It's really archaic now. And then then all the other background material on that particular landmark needs to be systematized and put in there. And it would appear that what we'll need to do is give the IT people digitally what we want to put in and have them put it in, kicking and screaming as they will be. So I don't know how we get this off the ground, this effort, but I don't think our archivist can help us on this that I can see. And I don't know how we go about pulling together all the various essential pieces that we would like to put in there, such as the Board of Supervisors memorandum designating something, and photographs, of course. So that's kind of where it is. We need to think it through how to accomplish this.
That's kind of what I was hoping we could do that first, but I'm thinking it's already April. The money we have is gone at the end of June. Maybe right now would be time to form a subcommittee, start looking into it. But if we need money, we'll probably would have to be used from the next fiscal year. It's because we would, by the time you came back, if you found something that we need to pay somebody to do something, probably the end of the year will be over by then. So that's why I was thinking the plaques right now, just because we kind of have a list already. We have a subcommittee that's worked on it for a long time. It's Commissioner Snow, Commissioner Duncan. Who else was on it? Was it me? Three of us. So I mean, I think maybe we should do, if someone wants to be involved with what Commissioner Nye mentioned, I think it's really important. I mean, when you go on our website, it is not up to par.
Mr. Chair, obviously, there's a difference here between the short-term and long-term goals, and one of them have to do with the immediate end of the fiscal year. So I can see why doing something as simple as plaques or something like that would make sense. Because those are things that ultimately we would like to do. It just might not be the first priority, but if they're budgeted and other things aren't budgeted, then that's maybe a practical expense. The other thing I would suggest in terms of Commissioner Nye's comment is the logical thing is to look to other jurisdictions, see what things they've got in terms of that first screen page that we might want to emulate. No, we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
I agree. Those are all good comments.
So do we want to form a subcommittee now to start looking into the website and updating?
We can, but I will, I'll do some looking. I hadn't thought of that. Just looking at other jurisdictions, see what they're doing on their websites.
Yeah, when we were looking at our subcommittee on landmarking, I started going to like Ventura County Historic website, and first of all, it amazed me how many historic landmarks they have in the county of Ventura. And the other was looking at how they're pictured, when you pull up their website. So that I think is a good idea. Maybe you want to look into that and then come back, and next month we can maybe form a subcommittee. Okay. Okay. Well, we kind of got off on the budget, but anyway, any other questions on the budget? None? Seeing none. Okay, we'll move on to district reports, item number 7. And district reports is individual commissioners may present brief reports that would be of interest to the public and or commission as a whole. No official action shall be taken on any individual matter. Okay, who has any district reports? Okay, Commissioner Knight.
So I've been trying to visit the Nancy Kelsey gravesite. Mentioned previously, got several inquiries out. I haven't told no yet. Still don't know who the owners are, but I'm working on that. Found out also it's in the 1st district. Interestingly, Yama is in the 1st. I'm happy to pursue it. I'm much closer to it than anybody. I did visit the Ontiveros Adobe. It's an interesting building.
Thank you very much for looking into those too. I really appreciate it. And that's, kind of what we brought out before is everyone to kind of look at your district and think of might be a potential.
I appreciate Mr. Knight poking around up there. The assessor's office can give you the owner of that property. If you have an APN number, that would help. Yeah.
Any other district report? Go ahead. Continue.
Adobe, I know someone that
Really can't hear.
still poking. Well, I'm done. Sorry.
Go ahead, Karen.
Really can't hear you guys.
Okay.
Oh,
Thanks.
Okay. Any other district report? No other district report? Okay. We'll move on then to our standard agenda. Okay, standard agenda, item number 8. HLAC's discussion of incentives to encourage landmarking of historic structures. The County Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission, HLAC, will discuss incentives to encourage landmarking of historic structures, including but not limited to the Mills Act. Okay, this, normally we have a presentation and everything. This is more of an open discussion that we put on our agenda. And so I guess as chair, I'll go over a background why we're here today at this point, and then we can open it up for a discussion. And the background is, as you know, there's been change in the last couple of years on how projects come to HLAC for discussion. And the HLAC commissioners has decided to have a discussion on incentives to encourage landmarking of historic structures. In other words, when we tell a property owner, they ask them, would you like your house or property to be a historic landmark or place of merit? It's like a yes or no. If they say yes, the project comes to us. If they say no, it just goes through the pipeline. So, we're looking over, well, maybe there's more incentives that could be added in the county of Santa Barbara to make it easier. And is what this whole discussion is today. And I want to do a little background on what you have in your packet. On November 2nd, 2010, pursuant to directions received during the Maddie's hearing to the Board of Supervisors, the board directed staff to research low to no cost incentives that would encourage property owners to seek historic landmark status and to report back to the Board of Supervisors as appropriate. The memorandum from Glenn Russell, who was at that time Director of Planning and Development, dated March 1st and also September 6th, 2011, summarizes the results of the staff's research. County staff time for research for the memorandum was about 25 hours. So they spent a lot of time on this letter that you have in your packet. And the commissioners do have both memorandums. They're both the same. I think it's the reason why there's two is probably the Board of Supervisors, one meeting got postponed to another. It is another memorandum. On June 13th, 2011, HLAC sent a letter to the Board of Supervisors on historic preservation incentives. The letter includes specific incentives that would mostly encourage owners to preserve their historic properties by agreeing to designation of the county as a landmark or place of historic merit. Commissioners also have this letter in your packet. So what happened is that HLAC, like today, they got together and they went through what they thought was be good incentives. They sent those recommendations to the County Board of Supervisors. Now, currently,
Mr. Chair,
yes,
are you going to follow along the Russell memo?
yes, I
Now,
was going to have Jonathan to
so,
put that up.
Yeah, I was going to ask him to do that.
It's the memorandum either dated March 1st or there's another one dated, whatever I said, September.
That's it.
Glenn Russell?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's it.
The one up.
Okay.
Perfect.
So currently, to help with this discussion, I've been kind of doing some research and I was working with Ann on something. And right now, there are currently two incentives by the Santa Barbara County to make your property a historic landmark. And if you scroll to the letter down to, it says incentives currently implemented by Santa Barbara County. So keep scrolling, Jonathan. There, okay. So there's that whole paragraph there. That currently is the County of Santa Barbara, and it still is. The County of Santa Barbara's incentive is through the Historic Building Code. And the Historic Building Code is useful, I'll just read it, is a useful incentive in that it allows greater than normal flexibility and cost effectiveness in preserving, reconstructing, or rehabilitation of historic structures. A qualified historical building need not be eligible for federal or state listing, but instead is defined as any building, group of buildings, district site, or object which is listed by any level of government as having historic importance. The code applies to both interior and exterior of historic buildings. And it's, okay, I'll just say the code because that has changed now. The code, allows for the allowable floor area for an historic building may be greater than otherwise allowed. There can be a reduction in required number of off-street parking spaces. Buildings may be exempted from California energy standards and may have relaxed requirements for certain redundant safety improvements. So that is currently what is out there for people of historic landmarks to have an incentive to make it a historic landmark. There's also one for the state, which I'll just read because this is all probably in your packet too. Commissioner Nye had brought up about the state of California has an incentive, and I believe that's in your packet. But the incentives currently implemented by the state of California State Historic Rehabilitation, it's a tax credit program. The State Historic Rehabilitation Tax Credit Program provides a California tax credit to certain property owners who rehabilitate their historical buildings. When property owners improve buildings by complying with the Secretary of Interior standards of rehabilitation, California historic buildings maintain their historical significance and better interpret our state's history. The tax credit encourages repair and sensitive replacement of historical elements on buildings instead of replacement with modern materials. And there's a website that they can go to apply for that. Again, that is if they have been already been a historic landmark, a place of merit. So currently, those are the two things that we can offer Santa Barbara County residents if they incentive to become a historic landmark. So today I thought we could go over, oh, thank you for putting that up, Jonathan. So today I thought we would go through as we previously and go through these incentives that are in that list and what we think is doable. Again, you know, what was done before in 2011 was all about low cost, no cost. That would not cost the county because budgets are very tight. They always seem to be. And so, you know, so I hope everyone has kind of read through and kind of start thinking about discussion on this topic. And Jonathan, you could put that back up because it has a list of the different ones. Yeah, the memorandum, because it's like a template. It really is, you know, under the, then you go, yes, right, the existing incentives. Of course, the number one is the Mills Act. And if you keep scrolling, there's federal incentive program, which that is the state one, correct? That's the same one I just read. That is the state. It's a federal program that states run. So what I just read you about the state tax credit, that is this federal incentives program. And then the next one down is preservation tax incentive for historic buildings. Anyway, I hope everyone has been looking at this at their leisure before this meeting, because there's some things in here that I think would be easy to implement or not so easy. And, you know, Jonathan, maybe while people are looking, pull up the historic landmarks HLAC's memorandum from June 13th, 2011. That is the letter to Joni Grave, who is chair of the supervisors, because this is what HLAC had at that time. Yeah, you should have it. And I guess I could just read it here. HLAC, this is the letter from HLAC to the Board of Supervisors on June 13, 2011 on historic preservation incentives. And I'll just read above the bullet point. HLAC has been investigating specific incentives to identify those that would most effectively encourage owners to preserve their historic properties by agreeing to designation by the county as a landmark or place of historic merit. They include bullet point 1, expedited fast tracking process. Number 2, reduced permit plan check and fees. Number 3, code relief, zoning, parking, setbacks, floor area bonuses, use of historic building codes, etc. 4, community development grants, historic preservation loans to low and moderate income owners of historic properties. 5, design assistance and technical support. 6, public acknowledgement, bronze plaque, website inclusion. And then the last one is the Mills Act property tax abatement program. And then at the very end, it says, in particular, expedited processing, fast tracking of projects involving historical resources would be a highly attractive inducement to owners to designate their properties. Could be easily managed and would incur minimal cost to the county. HLAC strongly recommends that your board take appropriate action to implement this incentive as early as possible time. So this was what was done back 2011. So we're looking at 13 years ago. And, you know, I don't believe that there's been any changes to any incentives. Our county council is shaking her head no. So, okay. Because I think what happens a lot of times, they have this big hearing, they spend all this money to compile all this information, and it never was followed up on. And so today, I want to open this up and let's have a discussion. And I don't know if anyone wants to get started on this. And if we want to do anything, we might decide that, okay, we just leave it as is. But I'd like to hear everyone's opinions on different things. I have some, but you know, let's start with our new commissioner, Commissioner Sluga. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have more questions. Think about, as an architect, I guess I think about how people plan a project. There are city processes, there are county processes. I wonder if somebody is going to do something, whether they are really aware that all of these incentives, how do we communicate? Could there be some way down at the city level that when somebody walks in and says, I'm thinking about doing such and such, that somehow that they can be made aware that they can take advantage?
You know, I'm going to jump in real quick because I've been thinking about this and you know, there's, you know, we have people that come, they buy a piece of property. They don't realize that they might be buying something historic. And so they buy the property, closes, they move in, they decide, you know, I want to add on this, I want to add on that. They go down to the county, they find out, oh, your property is potentially the historic landmark. You know, you have to do this, this, this. And they're kind of caught off guard because they weren't really told at the time they bought the property that it might be historic property. So right at the beginning, you know, this is beyond our purview, but something like in the real estate market, should we have something that they can give to people at properties that are looking at that this might be historic property and these are incentives to become a historic landmark at the time they're buying the property. I don't think we have the purview to get that far. Maybe we can go to the Association of Realtors and give them a sheet and say, these are the incentives for historic landmarks, and you can tell your potential property owners. But I was thinking at our level that maybe we should have those incentives, just what we just sold right now, on a memorandum for planning development. So when someone has a project, they're given the sheet that shows incentives if they become a historic landmark. So when they're asked that question, do you want to become a historic landmark? At least they're giving something that they can look at that says, oh, well, maybe this might be a good thing to do. So that was something I was thinking at the our level. You know, it's not as good as being at the beginning level when they're looking at the property, you know, but at least when they're bringing the project, before they say no, they might have a chance to say yes. Yes, go ahead.
Follow up.
Go right ahead.
Something, maybe because I'm relatively new in this vicinity, you have the county, also have city within the county. And a lot of people, if they're doing a construction project, city as opposed to county. Right?
That's correct. And so we only have jurisdiction over the county. So unincorporated areas of the county of Santa Barbara. So the city of Santa Barbara, you know, and each city has their own planning and rules. I mean, the city of Santa Barbara has a lot of different things than what we have as a county.
Okay, but if somebody has a historic property in Goleta, okay, does that mean that they're not, some of these incentives are not available to them?
It would be through the city of Goleta. If they're in the city limits of Goleta, Goleta has their own incentives. So these are county incentives, is that correct? So it wouldn't really apply to the city?
Mr. Chair, they may or may not. It depends upon what each individual city is doing. And obviously, some of these cities do have Mills Act contracts. We don't have Mills Act contracts, as far as I'm aware of, because we've never adopted the program because of the cost of monitoring it. That's what I've been told. But
I can always remember them telling us that the cost, and also that all the commissioners would have to take almost like a test every year. I mean, you know, online.
there's an
Education
ongoing
about it.
burden that they were
And
reluctant
they said it's very complicated.
to
and
take on.
or discouraging us to do it.
But obviously, our jurisdiction only goes to the unincorporated areas. And each one of these cities may or may not, for instance, have a landmark ordinance. It may or may not have a commission like ourselves that basically gives advice regarding landmarks. And they may or may not have these incentives. But for us, we're only talking about the unincorporated areas.
Yes, could I?
Okay, Commissioner Nye.
Um, the city of Santa Barbara has the Mills Act, and it's very active. Um, but the the reason I think the county does not have the Mills Act is simply if it's enacted, it it the county loses um, income because it cuts the revenue, tax revenue of the entity that is doing it. Um, the city did a memo, which is public information, and I can send it to anybody who'd like to read it in 2019, where they were suggesting some changes to the Mills Act. They were continuing it, but doing some tweaking. And I can't begin to explain some of these financial issues, but the short answer is that the city was forfeiting in the low hundreds of thousands of dollars a year simply because of the tax breaks they were giving to uh, homeowners who were in the Mills Act program. And so I think the county have always looked at as a real revenue loss situation, which they don't want to pursue. But it's nonetheless for the city, it thrives on historic preservation and tourism, and they have hundreds of historic buildings, whereas the county, the financial situation is very different. Doesn't have that same revenue source. As I've said before, the county planning maintains a list of potential historic properties, which the planners are now trained to track when somebody comes forward with a permit application. Secondly, all the realtors now, particularly in Montecito, are very quick to call a historian when they get a new client because it's inevitable that some renovations will want to be the owners of a new structure will want to make changes. Thirdly, most of these projects will involve private planners and private agencies that support property owners in their application process, and they are very tuned in to the potential for historic structures. So the awareness is there. If the property owners follow their procedures, doesn't mean that they necessarily like it or agree with it. But I like your idea of Mr. Chair of perhaps promoting awareness through something as additional means from the planning department memo or brochure, who knows? Thank you.
I'm sorry to be so talkative, but it maybe it's my own ignorance. if I'm understanding this correctly, then the unincorporated area, and we don't have it. I mean, they are, it looks like, as I'm reading some of this, it's proposed to have incentives, which is the county actually has adopted any of these?
Yes, what I read earlier, and it's on that memorandum that was dated 2011. It says incentives, it says existing state and federal programs, and the historic building code. That is the incentive for the county of Santa Barbara. So that is in place right now. And then what I also mentioned was the state program for a California tax rebate program, and that is also available for county residents at this moment. So those are the two that we know of, that we have right now. And, do we want to add more or suggest more to the county? All this work that was done in 2011, I think a lot of this, I'm just looking at it as maybe this is like a follow-up to remind them that this was done in 2011, and we might have specific things that we'd like to move forward.
Mr. Chair?
Does that answer your question? Okay, good. Go ahead, Commissioner Duncan.
Clarification. So did we become a certified local government? That's one of the things that we have a number of the requirements for it, but I'm not sure we became one.
Yeah, that's correct. We are not a certified, even though we would apparently meet the requirements. But again, it's probably a budgetary thing. I don't know.
Are you talking about the Mills Act?
No, certification of,
State?
It's on the Glenn Russell memo of September 6th, 2011. And it's on page 6.
Both memos are exactly the same.
Because this says general requirements include a preservation ordinance. We have that. Qualified Historic Preservation Review Commission. That's us, established by law. A survey and inventory program. Well, we essentially do that. We've surveyed what might be potential and what we have designated. Adequate public participation in the local historic preservation program. I think we've got that. Any local government is eligible to apply for certification. It would appear that we would have that. And then this would make us be able to get this historic preservation fund access and federal funds that can be used as matching funds to these CLD grants. So it would appear that that would be a step forward that we could take. And although it's specifically not for brick and mortars, there's all kinds of other things here that we could use those monies for and would augment our budget. That's second. The HLAC memo. For the June 13th. One potential source of federal funding. And it says Santa Barbara County is one of the only two local governments in the state.
So I guess the question is, how do we get to be certified? That question. Council?
As staff, obviously, when this was before the board before, what happened? That's the logical thing to do, I think, Mr. Chair, is look at what happened in the past. I mean, it could just be, this is one of the many things that P and D is simply hasn't had the budget or the staff to do.
Well, should we direct Jonathan, our clerical, to go back through the minutes around? So it was after 2011? I mean, after these meetings, correct? So it'd be at the very end of 2011 or 2012. Probably 2012 is when it came back to HLAC. Because it looks like the last supervisors meeting was September or something. So I can't imagine for the end of the year that would have had an answer. So Jonathan, there we have a homework for you. That sounds like a very good potential right there.
And then, Mr. Chair, once more going back to the letter to the board from the HLAC. It says, in particular, expedited processing, fast tracking projects involving historical research would be a highly attractive inducement to owners to designate their property, could be easily managed and would incur me. Well, what I would say to that is, in theory, yes, if there's budget and staff in P&D to be able to manage and expedite processing. But right now, there's people are complaining that they're having a hard enough time getting any processing. So to get it expedited, it's obviously more difficult. But I would say, yes, that obviously would be in theory. And the other thing I would say is, just judging by the feedback that we have gotten from property owners, that although the application of the historic building code is definitely one of the best and useful incentives that we have, if there are not members of staff in P&D in the building department that are looking at these applications to apply the historic building code and are familiar with it, that's not going to benefit you. And that's what we heard repeatedly from Karen Steinway. So there's a bunch of things I would say that if we wanted to have these incentives, we need a more robust support within P&D and the necessary budgeting and staff to do that.
Thank you, Commissioner. The other commissioners want to chime in?
I'll chime in. I think it's true that as a rule, the staff of planning and development is not up to speed on the historical building code and what its aspects are. Actually, if it in any given situation, it's a very, very good tool and saves quite a bit of money. But the staff has to be explained to them and shown to them. The applicant basically has to impose this information and demand their rights. And however they do that. But it does happen that these features are exempted. It can happen. It's just not something they deal with it on a daily basis. This being the planning people.
Mr. Chair.
Say something.
Just had a question. Is planning and development open all day, or they close at noon? Are people in the office working, or do they work from home still?
We do have our front counter open, 8 to 5. We do have it open to where you should be able to come in and ask a question and get an answer or be directed to where you can. There are certain like the lunch hour, we're closed from noon to 1. But generally, you're able to come into our planning and development office and talk to somebody.
think is the city, I guess it's the city that's still only open till noon.
I'm not too sure on what hours of operation they have.
One, I wasn't sure which one. Thank you.
I did find the minutes page for the Board of Supervisors for the day where this was heard. Did you want me to pull that up?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just a general comment here. For myself, I apologize. I veered into comments, but we should probably ask if there's any public
I
comment.
was going to
on this.
wait. Yeah, I was going to ask for public comment.
Let's see here. If anybody would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand in the chat. Seeing none.
I had it down to ask for that. Yes, go ahead.
Uh, I guess I'm kind of pondering how we communicate or how we could communicate the awareness of these to property owners that are. I mean, we talked about people going in and talking to people at a counter. Is there a handout that they could be given, or how does the promotion of their participation occur?
Do I understand it now? There isn't, and that's why I mentioned having us creating a handout to give to planning development staff that they could give to it. I mean, like I said before, the ideal thing would be at the real estate level when people are actually just looking at a property that, if they want to think that they can clear the whole lot and build something brand new, that they will realize that, oh, the county of Santa Barbara won't allow that because it's historic property. So let them be discouraged at the beginning and not buy the property and then find out they can't do it afterwards. And then, so that would, to me, at the real estate level is the first thing, but I think it would be the hardest thing to get to. But I think right at the current time is we could create something to give to staff at planning development so that when a property owner is wanting to do some renovations, they just bought this house and they decide to do the renovations, they're giving these incentives that, oh, you should really think about making this a landmark, a place of merit. You have these benefits. Down the road, maybe there'll be more benefits. But right now, there's the historic building code and that state tax credit. They probably aren't aware of that. So it might make them change their mind.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
to take take a page out of Commissioner Duncan's idea book, I would imagine either at the State Office of Historic Preservation or the California Preservation Foundation have prepared these kind of leaflets already that we can find. And I know that if you hang out around the planning counter, or the receptionists or thereabouts, there are handout materials there already. Not on historic buildings, but it wouldn't seem to be out of the realm of possibility that we could find something like this that is perhaps generic, but nonetheless, the building code is statewide. And the various benefits it provides could be summarized and probably have been in some form that we could pick up. I can look into that. I'd be happy to.
Commissioner Snow.
Yes, I'm looking at what Jonathan just put up about the Board of Soups. They're meeting on But it looks like they gave permission for the certified local government program. They all said aye.
So how do we follow up on something like
Sorry to look for the minutes after this Board of Supervisors meeting? Okay,
If that's the case, then obviously something got dropped. What's the date? Oh, okay. That's September. I see the date.
I believe this is what we're looking for right here.
Jonathan, definitely on these, be sure to make copies of these and send them to all of the commissioners.
Absolutely.
So we'll have this to go over in more detail and not just having to look at a screen.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just read this so the people that are online can hear it. So these are minutes from, did I see September 13th? Was that correct? 11th or?
That might have been September 11. September 13.
Okay, I was right. September 13th, 2011. Diane Black gave a follow-up from the Board of Supervisors discussion on September 13th regarding incentives for historic landmark designations. The Board of Supervisors did support applying for the Certified Local Government Program and encouraged our department to follow through on some of the other lower cost measures, such as plaques and other incentives for historic landmarks. Diane Black spoke with Dr. Russell, Director of Planning and Development, and his recommendation was to develop a budget for this work and submit a budget expansion request for next year's budget 2012-13 for Board of Supervisors review. The board authorizes a budget request. The application will be prepared by staff with members of HLAC. The benefit of the Certified Local Government Program is the ability to apply for small grants. However, the application process is extensive. Ongoing program requirements include annual training for each HLAC member and submittal of annual reports. The budget expansion request would include staff time for ongoing CGL requirements. Commissioner Brown asked if the Board of Supervisors would accept augmenting the budget to assist in televising HLAC, which could help the public know what HLAC does and how the community benefits. This would be included in the budget expansion request. So that's the minutes. So it looks like it all had to do with a budget request that probably didn't go through. There's a lot in here that we've all talked about wanting for a long time. Now, maybe the budget that we have now for the money that we have, maybe that was increased, from what it was before. I don't know, but that was a long time ago.
Keith,
But it's interesting that sounds like there is a lot of things that have to be done that we would have to do at our end for the Certified Local Government Program.
hey Keith, I did find more information from the meeting of December 12th, HLAC. Looks like there was a follow-up.
Okay.
You guys have that on your screen.
Okay. Let me just read this whole thing. It's interesting. Diane Black, County Director of Development Review, stated that she met with the subcommittee of Commissioners Brown and Witosh to discuss ways of utilizing a subcommittee to screen projects that are in the development review process. That sounds very familiar. for historic issues and to determine whether a full HLAC review should be required. Future discussion on the process will be needed prior to bringing it to the commission for its consideration. She also reported that an expansion budget is being worked on for potential budget augmentation requests for the Board of Supervisors to include establishment of a local government program and other incentives. When complete, the budget request will be brought forward for future commission review, aligning with the budget process at the Board of Supervisors. Okay, well,
There's nothing new under the sun.
no, it's the same thing we were still talking about.
In fact, the solar eclipse has just occurred and we're now in the bright
Exactly,
sunlight. again.
literally, yes.
But of course, we can't, for those of us who've been on the HLAC for a while, we can't help but note what this is when Diane Black, who was Deputy Director of Planning and Development, would meet with us and give us advice, in addition to hearing support staffs. So this was at a time when we were fully staffed and they thought it was valuable to have our input on these projects.
Yeah, those were the days. And in a way, that was the golden era. And we missed an opportunity because the director himself was an archaeologist. And he was very sensitive to these cultural impact issues. And our senior staff person here was an archaeologist, Joyce. So yeah, it's all gone to hell since then. There's still things we can do, but we're not, we don't have that sympathetic ear like we used to in the higher levels of planning and development.
I think we had Jane Stark as county council.
Any other comments? This has been like a discussion meeting, and I think a lot of things have come out. But to move forward, I hate to fall back on subcommittees all the time, but I'm just thinking, I as chair could try to put something together from what we got from this discussion, but maybe a subcommittee would be better to be able to brainstorm. I personally have been working on the incentives that I read to you already. I could do a draft, thing to give to planning and development that they could hand out. We could look at it at the next month's meeting, see if we like, I could start doing something like that. But this whole certified CLG program, I think we should look into. I personally think we should look into it. I don't mind going through training, for something that can benefit the whole county as people with landmarks. So, but we can't decide today on this dais what we're going to do, but I was thinking a subcommittee could come back and look into why this fell apart, and Jonathan could
Did find it more updated minutes, actually.
Okay. Keep record of all these your
down.
findings so you can give it to us all by,
Yeah,
give us a link to them.
definitely. I'll make sure these are mailed out, hard copies to all the members
Okay.
as well.
Thank you.
This is from the meeting of, looks like May 14th.
I'll just read it like I did before because there's might be people online. Diane Black, Assistant Director Report. This is from me, HLAC minutes from May 14th, 2012. Diane Black, Assistant Director, reported on the status of the HLAC budget expansion to provide funding for incentives as well as to televise meetings and increase staff support to HLAC. She stated that many departments, including planning and development, have been asked to reduce general fund contributions. A budget expansion for HLAC will not be submitted to the Board of Supervisors since budget principles do not provide for an expansion request unless there is an identified funding source. Televising a meeting would cost $500 per meeting and is not in the budget. Televising an HLAC meeting with a landmark component or controversial project with public interest may be a consideration in the future. Grant funding for the Certified Local Government Program should be investigated if the HLAC wants to pursue participation in the program. So that kind of tells us what happened with the increase in the budget and televising our meetings. But the last sentence again, grant funding for the Certified Local Government Program should be investigated if the HLAC wants to pursue participation. So it says right there, that's an open-ended that we want to investigate. You know, it's through the minutes and it was through the planning development. So where do you think we should go from here? Go ahead,
Does
Commissioner Sun.
anybody know about any grants that might be available or historic preservation purposes?
Not, yeah, there's, it'd be hard because we're looking at something that the whole general population that buys a property in the county of Santa Barbara take advantage of. And a grant is like a specific for a specific property, which
No, it sounds like the grant would be to grant funding for the local problem. Would, if we wanted to, it's not grant, well, the funding would go eventually, but this would be to set up this program to get
we could-
grant funding.
yeah, that's a possibility. Commissioner Duncan, were you about to want to say something?
Yes, what I would suggest we do is to simply look at the letter that HLAC wrote to the board before. That's a pretty short letter, and it's got a number of things in it. And we should just look at that and sort of bring it up to date. What's happened with these things in the interim? And not that this necessarily will end up being a letter to the board, but ultimately it'll probably, whatever we do, might require some budgetary or administrative action from the board level. But it at least will inform us and the public. Okay, in the meantime, what's happened with these various things? In some places, we may have gone backwards. So, because if we want to get to these incentives, I suggest we evaluate what was discussed before and what progress we've made. And that's just sort of like a baseline. We could then decide moving forward what would be the most effective and most practical things we could do.
I think a subcommittee would be a way to do that. I think they could sit around and or email back and forth and work on it and figure out. I think, I think we need to get it into a subcommittee level so that we can do it. They can do a lot of work and back to the full HLAC. And, we could do that. And like I said, I've already had this kind of idea for this letter for planning development or memo, that memorandum that planning development could have, and I could work on that separately, show it to the subcommittee, and then bring it to the full board.
Mr. Chair, obviously, that's a way of sort of enacting one of these incentives. How we can educate the planners about some of these incentives. That could be involved in this rewrite of the letter, this rewrite and update of the letter. I'd be glad to work with you on that. If you want to do that.
Okay.
And I had a question.
Sure, Commissioner Sun.
Because I'm looking at all the bullet points here and some of them are really good, but you notice that some of that has already been said no to by the county, which would be the last one, the last bullet point, and the TV. But I'm also wondering if some of these other ones, if you have code relief, and would that necessitate a changing of the county code or amending it? Or is that something that we could just do within our own section of the code, the historic landmarks section? That's more of a county council type question. Well, because it actually says code relief zoning. That's definitely beyond our purview.
So Commissioner Duncan proposed something, having the chair and him work on updating this HLAC letter. Or should we actually do a full subcommittee kind of work? I mean, if everyone is subcommittee out and feel like they've extended themselves so much, other things, that maybe this might be the first way to work is just have Mr. Duncan this initial thing of this letter and then other, other problems. It's something
I think
we'll.
it would be good that before before you gave it to us, if you talk to Ms. Ryerson.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Ms. Ryerson knows that I always send things to her first.
Well, going forward, I'm going to check into how other jurisdictions are handling their websites, because an improved website would also be a good tool to raise awareness. And the other thing is, I'm going to look for information that we could disseminate that's already been written up on the historic building code concern. So
And like I say, I'll work. I guess I'll show you what I've been working on this. What our current incentives are that we might be able to throw it into something. Something that could be done sooner than later. Okay. Any more questions on this item? Well, I guess that is ending for this agenda item. And first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming when we're missing the eclipse outside right now. So I don't see anything else on the agenda, so I'm going to adjourn this agenda. And our next meeting is May 13th, 2024 at 10 o'clock, and it will be in the Board of Supervisors hearing room, the same room you're in today. Thank you very much.